Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth and will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we are talking about sports and the business of sports betting. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, and Schwegman, Lumber, Woosner, an intellectual property law firm. Please subscribe and like our Club E channel. We can use your help. So just take a moment. We will wait here. Also wanted to let you know that our Club E podcasts are available on your favorite platform, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and many others. All right, with that, I'd like to welcome back a returning guest, Patrick Klinger, who is president of Agile Marketing. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you again.
Yeah, so this is at least the second, if not third or even fourth time you've been with us. So thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, it truly, it's a pleasure. It's always great to converse with you, and I'm a big fan of the show.
All right, great. Well, thanks again for joining us. Patrick's contact info will be in the comments section below. So again, Patrick, thanks for joining us again. For somebody who hasn't heard one of your prior episodes here with Club E, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your firm, and the various things that you are up to.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rick. I've spent most of my career in sports and entertainment marketing. I was the longtime vice president of marketing for the Minnesota Twins. Before that, I spent time in the entertainment business at the Xcel Energy Center and River Center complex, and headed up marketing for Ticketmaster. So most of my career has been spent around sports and promoting concerts and family events and various different attractions. I launched Agile Marketing Partners about 10 years ago, after realizing when I was on the team side that there were a lot of companies investing in sports and sports sponsorships that really didn't have much of a strategy or a plan, or they weren't getting full value for the really significant dollars that they were investing in sports. And so I've gone to the other side of the table now, and I'm trying to help brands understand how to get more from their sports sponsorships and navigate the world of sports marketing.
Now, obviously, there's been a lot of changes since you started your firm. Before we dive into the sports betting topic that we're going to dig into today, talk a little bit about how you've seen the industry change and evolve over the time period that you've had your own firm, and maybe touch on a little bit about what was behind your starting the firm. And so maybe kind of tie in a little bit of your background with how the industry has evolved.
Well, it really has evolved. You know, certainly on the digital side, it's evolved greatly. There weren't all of those options available when I was working for the Minnesota Twins. You know, the teams, the brands were really trying to get their arms around how to take advantage of social media and all the digital opportunities. Now that's a really important component of most sponsorships. So that's probably been the single biggest change that I've seen since I've been in this field. And I think that a lot of companies are doing a better job now of understanding that they have invested a lot of dollars in sports. And it can't be just about slapping a logo on an outfield wall or on a dasher board. Signage isn't enough anymore. Frankly, it's just really expensive wallpaper. And if you're going to invest with a sports team, you better have a strategy. You better have a plan for those expensive assets that you're buying, so that you're really getting a return on your objectives. I think for too long, companies just wanted to be associated with a sports team. They thought it was cool or sexy, but it really wasn't moving the needle from a marketing perspective. My mission is to try to help companies understand that they can make a difference if they have a plan, develop a strategy, leverage their assets. It'll make a huge difference, and they'll be pleased with their sponsorship when it's come to an end.
Mhm. And then just from a layman's perspective, curious, are the different sports leagues basically one and the same in terms of how you market them, or from one sport to another sport, you market much differently?
For the most part, they're the same, but what's possible with each league can be a little bit different. I find that probably in baseball and hockey, you've got a little bit more flexibility, maybe basketball as well. The NFL is a different beast. That's, they sort of have their own set of rules. It's certainly more expensive than the other leagues. So it's really about what the brand is looking for. They might get into sports because they want hospitality. They're looking for suites and season tickets. They want to entertain clients and their employees. They might be looking for brand awareness. They want to connect with the fan base. It's really about what their objective is, and then trying to find the right property and the right assets to make that objective a reality. So that's really what I try to dig into and understand the motive behind why a brand has decided to invest in sports.
And speaking of those objectives, and obviously it's a case-by-case basis, industry by industry, but with that said, would a marketer at a company view sports similarly to other ways they might market? Would they look at returns and or metrics the same, or would they be much different?
I think that they're probably a little bit different. I mean, sponsorships can be a little more challenging to measure. And again, some of it is predicated on the objective, right? But I suspect that, a lot of brands are challenged to measure the impact of their sponsorship. They really haven't been able to determine whether, working with the Twins, the Vikings, the Timberwolves, the Wild, the Loons, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of how much business it's bringing in. Sometimes they simply want to do it because they want to show their employees that they're part of the community, right? But measuring, it's possible. You have to set up metrics to do it, but it's probably treated a little bit differently than the way that you might view a television campaign or a radio campaign or digital media.
And then before we dive into the sports betting topic for today, again, Patrick Klinger is our guest here on Club E. Patrick, I know that you have a passion for a variety of things outside of work. You've given of your time and given effort to a variety of different causes. Two-part question. Number one, did you come to the sports industry from kind of a point of passion? And then before we get into the meat of our conversation today, maybe just touch on some of the things that also interest you outside of sports, and other maybe causes or activities that you've been involved in.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Rick. I was a very passionate baseball fan and sports fan when I went to work for the Minnesota Twins. I will tell you, though, honestly, that when you spend time in a particular industry, and I have in baseball in particular, and sports in general, is that it's not unusual to come out of it less passionate about the sport. And that's because you're in it day to day. You see it for the business that it is. You become a little bit more, at least I did, a little less excited by the wins and a little less down by the losses. It really became for me, how does this affect my job? Certainly when the team was playing better, it was easier to sell tickets and sponsorships. when the team was struggling, had a bad season, that made it a little more challenging. So I'm not quite as passionate about sports as I once was. I still watch, I still care. I want the local teams to do well. I'm just not glued to the television like I maybe once was, and I don't attend many games any longer, other than what I need to do for work purposes. Outside of business, I'm very passionate about mental health, and in particular, suicide prevention. I've been on the board of directors of Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, SAVE, for about 20 years. I'm also on the board of directors of a local mental health, nonprofit mental health center called New Path. And that's just something that I really feel strongly about. Having gone through my own mental health challenges over the years, it's something that I really believe that we need to talk more about and put more resources towards. And I'm really pleased to be involved in those causes.
And then I know that you've also done some formal and informal mentorship with younger people from my own experience with you. So you've also given back in a variety of other ways too. And some of the things we talked about before the show today, traveling to other cities to volunteer and other things.
Yeah, you know, Rick, I had some people take me under their wings when I was a young man and point me in the right direction, give me a lot of guidance and help. And I've always wanted to pay that forward. And I try to do that every day. And sometimes I do it better than other times. But if I can make a difference in a young person's life, if I can, assist those who are going through a challenging time, that gives me great sense of satisfaction.
Good. Well, thank you again for being with us here today. Thanks for sharing and being open about different things that you're involved with and have experience with. So again, a general thank you. All right. So sports betting, big numbers, big topic, lots of complexity. Maybe just talk about the word big as how it relates to sports betting in particular in this country. Now, obviously there's global markets as well, but let's at least start with the United States.
Yeah, sports betting has really exploded, Rick, over the last couple of years. Over 30 states now have legalized sports betting, and more are coming online. California later this year will vote on it, and if they approve it, that'll be another huge influx of dollars. Last year, Americans wagered about $57.5 billion in sports. That was up 165% from the year prior. And so as more options become available, more states legalize sports betting, you're going to see those numbers grow exponentially. It's expected that revenues will reach well over $11 million in just a couple of years. And sports, the amount wagered will be north of 100 million, certainly.
Wow, those are big numbers. What about, given that we're both here in Minnesota, talk a little bit about what's going on in the state of Minnesota as it relates to sports betting.
Yeah. Well, if you would have bet on sports betting being legalized in Minnesota this year, you would have lost. It went right down to the wire. There were two bills. The House, which is controlled by the DFL, did pass a bill, but it restricted sports betting to tribal casinos. And those tribes would also be able to have a mobile application. The Senate, which is controlled by the GOP, wanted to include the state's two racetracks. And that was the deal breaker. The tribes wouldn't support it. Without the tribal support, the governor wouldn't support it. And the session ended without any passing of the bills. Now, there's a possibility of a special session coming, but I don't think it will be taken up. I view this a little bit, Rick, like Sunday liquor sales in Minnesota. It seemed to come up year after year after year. And eventually, the drip, drip, drip broke the dam, and they were able to get it done. And I think that's probably the case with sports betting in this state. Maybe next year, the year after, it'll happen. It's inevitable. It's getting everybody on the same page and getting the tribes behind it.
So the stalemate where the tribes want to control the sports betting, that's been kind of the status quo for a while, correct?
It has. Casino gambling and betting here, aside from the charitable gambling, the pull tabs, it's all been controlled by the tribes. They've got that right. Anytime that you sort of open up that pact and you bring in the casinos or the racetracks, it changes things, and that was certainly the case this year.
All right. What about the sports leagues? How are they handling sports betting?
It's amazing how money changes minds, right? A couple of years ago, all of the leagues said that sports betting would lead to the ruination of sports, professional sports, that it would destroy the integrity of the game. On the wall leading out of every clubhouse in Major League Baseball is a sign specifically telling you, the players, the rules against gambling. Well, now gambling has not only been accepted by the professional leagues, it's being encouraged. And it's all because of the money. The leagues are selling their data to sportsbook operators. They're selling sponsorships. You can't go 5 minutes watching a sporting event without seeing an ad for DraftKings or FanDuel or Caesars. You see the signage inside arenas and ballparks. It's been a complete 180 in just a couple of years. Even a few years ago, the leagues wouldn't allow any teams in Las Vegas for fear that the gambling influences there would destroy the integrity of the game, right? Well, look at what's happened. Now we've got teams in Las Vegas, and all the leagues are scrambling to have a presence there.
And I have to admit, I don't know a lot about all the leagues, but we have the professional football team. Raiders are there. What other leagues are currently utilizing?
NHL has the Golden Knights. Baseball has been looking at that as a possible relocation site for Oakland if they can't get a deal done for a new ballpark there. So I think it's a matter of time before all of the leagues are probably there.
Okay.
But again, that's been a complete change from just a few years ago. And it's really about the money. There's so much money in gambling that I think the teams and they also understand that gambling keeps fans engaged, right? If you've got some skin in the game, you're more apt to watch, probably more apt to attend games. If you don't have any dollars on the line, you're still pulling for your team, but you're certainly a little bit more involved if you've got a chance to win or lose some money.
Yeah. With the change in the environment, does that change things regarding Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame?
I don't think so. It's been a question that's been asked a lot. But my sense is that, Pete has done enough things where he lied about his gambling. He's done some other things that just probably isn't going to get him there, at least while he's alive. And I know some Hall of Famers, and I've spoken to them about it, and they are not in support of Pete getting in. So I don't anticipate that that's going to happen, at least in the near term.
Okay. How about college? The NCAA is loosening up. Talk a little bit about what the opportunities as well as the risks are regarding sports betting and colleges.
Yeah, just like the pro leagues, the NCAA has loosened up their restrictions around gambling and working with sports books. The benefit is that some of these programs can get a much needed infusion of dollars. Because people spend a lot of money betting on college sports, March Madness in particular, right? It's huge. The downside is that there's probably a greater risk for match fixing, game fixing in college, because the players don't make anything unless they've got an NIL deal, but most of them don't make anything. And if there's the temptation of money on the line for them, there's probably some greater risk. And there's also less oversight. The smaller leagues and the teams, they don't have all of the apparatus in place to really regulate sports betting, not like the pro leagues do. So I think that there are opportunities. There's money to be made, but there's also risks involved with college athletics opening up what could be Pandora's box with working with legalized sports betting operators.
Sure. And I don't remember the details, and maybe I'm testing your memory too much here. And if you don't recall, certainly don't have to go into the details, but it seems to me there was college basketball betting scandal in like the 50s or 60s, but I don't remember any of the details, and maybe you don't either, but just popped into my brain.
Yeah, there have been incidents of game fixing in college sports in the past. So this isn't without precedent. If the NCAA really goes down this path, they're going to have to put some additional oversight in place to ensure that those kind of things don't happen.
All right. What about some of the benefits? Talk a little bit about the benefits of legalized sports betting.
Well, first of all, it's safer than dealing with a local bookie, probably, right? I mean, there's some people involved in illegal sports betting that you probably don't want to deal with. So having it legalized puts some more regulations in place. It brings it out into the daylight. And I think that that's a good thing. Secondly, there's the tax revenue. There's a lot of money to be made there. I mean, some states like New Jersey are bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars a year in tax revenue. It gives people what they want as well. About 65% of the population believes that sports betting should be legalized everywhere. So you've got the preponderance of the population saying, let us do this. So I think that that's a benefit too. If they want it, maybe it's time that we allow it to happen.
Sure.
Legalized sports betting also allows you to better identify those people who are problem gamblers. Again, if you're going to the local bookie, he's not going to stop you if you've got an issue, gambling away the house. But there are enough safeguards in place where you can probably start to identify those people who are really struggling with a gambling addiction. So I think that that's really beneficial as well. And then lastly, it makes the games more entertaining. As I said earlier, if you've got some skin in the game, you're more likely to be watching, attending. It makes the whole experience that much more enjoyable.
Sure. Well, as a sports fan over the years, just have seen how sports are followed and reported on because of fantasy sports, which ultimately a part of fantasy sports is obviously the entertainment and the involvement, but there's also a betting component to that as well. Not a flat out necessarily who's going to win or lose, but you're betting your players and stuff. So obviously betting and fantasy sports have completely changed how sports are consumed and reported on.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. Again, very recently, the leagues frowned on fantasy sports, and they've embraced that as well. And again, it's money and to a degree, but it's also the understanding that people enjoy that, and it makes the games more fun and more interesting. And to pretend it doesn't happen is silly. So they've now embraced it, and I think it's for the betterment of sports.
Hey, talking about fantasy sports and how things have changed, talk a little bit about the typical sports bettor. Who is it today, and has that changed over time? Like fantasy sports has altered the sports landscape.
Yeah, the typical sports bettor is a male, 30s, 40s, typically white, though that's changing as well. They generally place bets between maybe $10 to $100. And so it's not huge money. Certainly there are those who go way beyond that. Football is the most popular sport to bet on, followed closely by basketball. About somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 12% say they bet on a daily basis. So
10 to 12% say they bet on a daily basis.
Right, those who are involved in sports betting. So a lot of them are betting daily. Now, what's interesting is how many women have become sports bettors. In fact, the rate of women joining sports betting apps now exceeds men. And there are some sports betting apps that have more female clients than they do male. So women are getting into this as well. And I think that's, it stands to reason, right? Is it becomes easier to bet online. It's more accessible. You don't have to deal with the local bookie. Certainly more women are going to get involved in it, and the data shows that.
Yeah, and fantasy sports, obviously Survey of One is not a good one, that being me, but I've completely seen how, whereas fantasy sports were mostly male dominated a couple decades ago, now it's I don't know if it's 50-50, but significantly larger percentage of female participation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that too is, the trend we're seeing in gambling probably follows the trend that we saw with fantasy sports.
Talk a little bit about the business side of sports betting. If the volume of sports betting goes up, does that then mean that the operators are making a bunch more money? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but talk a little bit about kind of the business side and what it's like to be an operator and how this pickup in activity is impacting them.
Yeah, we hear all these numbers, right? Billions and billions of dollars being bet on sports. So you would think that the sports betting books would be making a ton of money. The reality is they're losing a lot of money right now. It's a little bit like the early days of the internet, with everybody trying to get into it, and then it's the survival of the fittest. And I think that's you're going to see, consolidation, and a lot of these companies that have stepped into sports gaming are probably not going to survive. They'll end up being sold off to a larger operator, or they'll merge. But right now, a lot of money is being spent on promotion and customer acquisition. And so they're not making dollars at present, but they certainly see this as an investment that they need to make right now for what is to come. So they will be profitable in time. At the moment, they're not so much. But that's just part of a lot of businesses, right? You've got to spend initially to build up your customer base, and eventually the money comes.
You mentioned what I thought was a high number of daily bettors. We talked a little bit about some of the benefits, and also talked a little bit about some of the drawbacks. Talk about the gambling addict and what kind of risk there is to opening up the betting more, and then you're going to end up with more people addicted. And I think that's maybe more than anything the most common rationale or reason given to not expand gambling. So maybe talk a little bit about the addiction side of the industry.
Well, that is a challenge. The more accessible sports betting becomes, the more people will try it, the more people who will likely get addicted to it. It just simply stands to reason. And if you can't go 5 minutes, right, without watching a game, without seeing these ads encouraging you to sign up, and they provide incentives like, the first $100 free, first $100 in bets free. When those kind of things happen, clearly there will be those who maybe wouldn't have tried sports betting, but are now going to jump into it, and they get addicted just like they can get addicted to just about anything else. It's something that, every time that legislation passes allowing sports betting in another state, states have to be very cognizant of, because they will be dealing with it. It's absolutely clear that the sports gambling addiction will go up. It will be a problem for some.
Hey, as we get near the end of our conversation here today, talk a little bit about what you see happening going forward. Kind of have two different angles to take this. Number one would be sports marketing in general, which you know a lot about and have spent a lot of years in. And then second would be sports betting. So if you look out 3 to 5 years, you got a crystal ball. We're not going to go back and hold you too accountable for this stuff. So maybe be a little open to leading our audience here as to what you see happening over the next 3 to 5 years in A, sports marketing, and B, sports betting.
As far as sports marketing goes, I think brands are going to get a little bit smarter about what they do with sports teams. The money is so large now with sponsorships. The cost of working with a professional sports team is usually at a level. Now you can have lower end partnerships, but many of the deals are they're certainly in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars. And brands and organizations will have to be very smart about making sure that they are getting a return. So where I see things trending is that companies are going to be a little more strategic than they've been in the past. I think that there will be an increasing number of platforms for them to take advantage of. The way that technology is advanced as there are opportunities for sponsorship that didn't exist 10 years ago, 15 years ago, certainly. And I think that brands will be looking for a return. They want to measure to make sure that their investment is actually delivering. So those are some of the trends that I see coming. As far as sports betting is concerned, I fully anticipate that virtually every state in the country will have legalized sports betting within the next 5 years or so. In Minnesota, we're surrounded by states that have it. And so right now, people are jumping in their vehicles and they're driving to Diamond Joe's in Iowa, or over to South Dakota and Sioux Falls, and that's where they're doing. We will have it here. The dam is holding back the water right now, but it can't forever. And I think it'll become a really intrinsic part of sports. There are venues like Wrigley Field, the hallowed ground of baseball, right? That is adding a sports betting parlor. You're seeing other venues across the country do it. So where a couple of years ago, the leagues gave the Heisman to sports betting and gambling, now they're actually putting betting parlors inside sports venues. So that's what a radical change has happened over the course of the last just couple of years.
Good point. Very good point. if I'm a brand and I haven't done sports marketing before, and I called you up, and you were to kind of lead me through a conversation, a journey to better understand what the opportunities are and such, where would we start?
Well, first of all, I'd start by asking why. Why do you want to invest in sports? Why do you want to invest with a particular team? What is it you're looking to accomplish? What are your goals and objectives? Really try to understand the purpose behind a sponsorship with a team or a league or a property. Sometimes, Rick, and I've seen this many, many times. It's simply the CEO likes the team, and he or she wants to be associated with it, wants to walk into the venue and see the company logo, or to be able to tell friends at the country club that they're a sponsor of the Twins, the Vikings, the Timberwolves. What I really try to do is dig down and find out what the real reason is, and then once we identify what they're trying to accomplish, then we go about identifying the assets that they need to make that happen, and cut out everything that you don't need. And far too many brands sort of buy off the menu from sports teams. They're given a proposal. They said, this is what you can get. This is what it costs. And they say, okay, well, I guess we'll do that, without any negotiation, without any idea on how to push back or ask for things that they maybe didn't even know were possible. And so that's the process that I generally go through with each prospective client, and get down to the core reason why they think working with sports makes sense for their company.
Great, thanks for sharing that. All right, so as we are near the end, you've had a very interesting career. A couple of different stops at some major brands, major industries. Talk a little bit about maybe an important lesson that you learned along the way that now in hindsight, maybe you say to yourself, gee, I wish I would have learned that a little sooner. Yeah.
As I was climbing the ladder and I was being put in leadership positions, I think sometimes I believed I had to have all the answers, that people were looking to me for direction and guidance, and that I needed to have the answers. That's why I was in that role. And I've realized that I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have all the solutions, but I tried to keep up an appearance sometimes that I did. And that put me into, sometimes a bad place mentally and emotionally. Because I wasn't as willing to show vulnerability as I wish I would have earlier. And I'm a big believer in that now. It's okay to say, I don't have the answer, but let me get it. Let me work on it. We'll try to work on it together. I try to be more vulnerable about, how I'm feeling and what's going on in my life. All things that I didn't do a great job of probably when I was younger. Because I kept up a facade that, I was a leader. I needed to have these answers, and it put me into a spiral. So that is what, if I had one thing I wish I would have known earlier in life, it would have been, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, and to admit that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So thanks for sharing that and being vulnerable. I appreciate that. Hey, regarding our topic around sports marketing and sports betting, is there a key takeaway that you'd like our viewers and listeners to bring with them when they reflect back upon our conversation?
Yeah, with sports marketing, I would suggest to any company that's considering it, go into it cautiously. Understand it can be a significant investment. If you don't have all the answers, find somebody who can help you with that. I like to believe that I can. As it relates to sports betting, like anything done in moderation, it can be a lot of fun. It can be entertaining, but you have to understand your limits. And, people who start gambling away, their 401ks, their retirement, their mortgages, that's a bad place to be. And moderation is terrific. Excessiveness can be tragic. And that's something we'll have to deal with more and more, I think, as sports betting becomes legalized one day here in Minnesota and across the country.
Sure. Although that lesson probably is good for a lot of different things.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, want to thank our sponsors again, Irish Titan, an e-commerce development firm, Highland Bank, locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, and Swegman Lumber Woosner, an intellectual property law firm. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us. To our listeners and viewers, please hit the subscribe and like button. And then Patrick, while we have your email in the comments section of the video, not everybody's going to catch that. We are going to have some podcast listeners. So why don't you give everybody the best way to get a hold of you, whether that's your email or the website or whatever you want to steer people toward.
Sure. I'd suggest they go to the website at agilemarketingco.com, agilemarketingco.com. And all my contact information is there, along with some examples of work that we've done, clients that we've helped assist. And no, it's been a pleasure, Rick. Great to be with you today.
Yeah, well, always good to see and talk to you, Patrick, and look forward to getting together soon, and look forward to having you back another time. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.